It's Q&A time. So over the course of me making all of these videos, I've received a lot of questions on specific topics. So I figured what I would do is I would gather all the questions and I would do a Q&A segment on these things. So today we're going to cover Q&As on insulin sensitivity. So let's go ahead and let's get into this. So I have my cards here with all the questions that you guys have asked. So first question, what do I need to get started? So in order to get started with testing your blood glucose levels, you're going to need a glucometer. That's it, a glucometer, just very basic. You can order them off of Amazon, but the things that I would recommend, like when looking at the glucometer, is make sure they come with test strips and the lancets, because the test strips alone can get pretty pricey. So I always like to look at the glucometers that have all of that stuff included. And typically glucometers can run you anywhere between like 19 to like 50, 60 bucks, depending on how fancy you want to get. But you don't need anything fancy. So just a glucometer. What blood glucose levels are good? So this is a great question. So a lot of times people will be like, oh, well, I'm in the 90s and according to my doctor, that's good. So yes, that is good, but you have to understand what the whole purpose of why we're trying to do this. It's so you can have better utilization of carbohydrates, which is going to benefit you for your physical goal. And doctors don't really look at it that way. So I would say a range that you would want to aim for would be anywhere within the 70s or even 80s. Now, of course, it is all dependent on the person, but the more insulin sensitive you are, the better you're going to have a response with uptaking those carbohydrates. What would be the best regimen for measuring my glucose levels? First thing in the AM, fast it once a week. So again, great question. So I would recommend starting off taking your blood glucose first thing in the morning, fast it. Now, when you are about to take your blood glucose, as kind of a side note here, be sure that you are thoroughly cleaning the finger that you're going to take the testing from, because if you have things on your hands, like ladies, like lotions or even some soaps that can leave like a residue behind, it can skew the reading of the blood glucose test. So first thing in the morning, fast it every morning. That's how I would do it. And if you happen to notice that your levels are running really high in the morning, you might want to also test in the afternoon, about 3 to 3.5 hours after you have a meal. But during that time, make sure you're not snacking, you're not consuming any artificial sweeteners, just water, because again, you don't want your results to be skewed. And the reason why you're going to want to do this in the afternoon and also the morning is because in the morning, cortisol could be playing into having high levels. And that's something called the dawn phenomenon. Some people experience it, some people do not. Should I invest in a glucometer, or should I stay low carb regimen for a few months, exercise, walk more, and then see if I'm losing weight? So first things first, how do you know that you're insulin resistant if you're not testing your blood glucose levels? So that would be my first question. So it would honestly probably be smart to test your blood glucose levels first. And then once you get those readings, then develop that plan. Then go, if you are insulin resistant, then incorporate the low carb diet, okay? Of course, you're always going to want to make sure you are exercising, because that can help as well. What are some signs that I may be insulin resistant without checking my blood glucose levels? So some signs could be, maybe you're just a little bit more sluggish. You're feeling just a little bit more, I'm going to use the word lazy for the lack of a better term right now. Maybe you're not getting as good of pumps in the gym. Maybe you're gaining weight a little bit more easily than what you have before in the past. So those things could be signs that you are insulin resistant. And also too, if you do have a hard time losing weight, that could be one factor contributing to that. Okay, now just one, because there could be many factors, but since I'm sticking to insulin sensitivity, we're just going to stay in our lane on this one. Do I have to do low carbs if I'm insulin resistant? So the answer to that is yes. And the reason for that is because you got to think what's going on here. If you are insulin resistant, that means you have excess blood glucose in your bloodstream, meaning that you're eating a carbohydrate, it's not getting passed into the cell and being utilized as fuel through the cell mitochondria because the receptors around that cell are saturated. So therefore, the carbohydrates that you are consuming, all of that glucose is not getting passed into the cell and just sitting in the bloodstream. So in order to get rid of the excess blood glucose levels, you're going to have to pull out carbs so your body can start filtering this stuff out so you can become more insulin sensitive. Do I need to be in a calorie deficit to reset insulin? So that is a great question, and my answer would be no. Now, does it help being in a deficit? Absolutely it does. But you don't necessarily have to. So you can be in maintenance or go into maintenance and just change the fat to carb ratio. So of course you're going to want to have the higher fats. You can even put a little bit of carbohydrate calories into protein and raise protein up a little bit. And you're just going to want to drop your carbs. So that's going to be the most important thing that you focus on with resetting insulin. And if you are in maintenance and you're noticing that, man, it's been a little bit, blood glucose isn't going down, what do I do? Then I would maybe try dropping your calories a little bit to see if that helps as well. And just be sure that you are exercising, because when you are exercising, that's also going to help you get rid of that excess blood glucose, or at least utilize it. Last question. Can I refeed while resetting insulin? So this is really case by case. So for example, I have a handful of clients right now where we are working on insulin sensitivity. And what I've noticed with them is that their cortisol levels will start going up a little bit because they're a little bit of high stressors. And I've noticed when I've given them refeed days, not only does it bring stress down, but it's also dropping their blood glucose levels. So could it just be the fact that it's also dropping cortisol that's directly impacting blood glucose? I'm not 100% sure, but I would go as far to say that is my theory, and that's what I think. So I think it just depends on the person. If you're someone where maybe you are a stressor, you're a high stressor, you're just very type A, and you notice that blood glucose isn't dropping, maybe give that a try and see if that kind of helps you just relax. So that is all that I have for this. If you guys have any questions, please keep sending them my way. You can send them in my DM. And thank you to all of you guys who did ask these questions. More to come.